Welcome to the Binge Dietitian podcast. I'm your host, Jonathan Sumner, registered dietitian, focusing on helping men and women end binge eating, end food guilt, and finally say yes to life. This podcast is for educational and informational purposes only. It is not substitute for medical and personalized advice. Hi guys, my name is Jonathan, the Binge Dietitian, and I would like to gladly welcome you to the first episode of this podcast. I'll discuss the 3 reasons why we need to break the taboo of not talking about binge eating, and a brief story about my lowest low with binge eating. I want you to know that you're not alone and there is a way out. So let's get straight to it. Here are the 3 reasons why we need to break the taboo of not talking about binge eating. Number 1. Binge eating is so normalized in society that people don't even see it as a problem. So, what we need to raise awareness of with binge eating is that it's such a debilitating condition that leads people to be so frustrated with their weight. You might be wondering why your weight isn't changing, or why you're just not able to reach your weight loss goals, no matter what you do. To an extent, binge eating disorder is one of the most common eating disorders globally. However, we don't really speak about it enough. We tend to downplay the word binge, as if we're just binge watching TV shows. But binge eating can be one of those words that is associated with pain and trauma for someone struggling with binge eating. Number 2, it can negatively affect people's quality of life. It can also affect relationships with loved ones, and also worsen medical conditions. So, have you ever been in a situation where you've been invited by a family member for a family meal or eating out with a loved one, and you're served a delicious meal followed by a delicious dessert? I want you to imagine a moment you were served a meal. What was going through in your mind? Were you secretly having some thoughts of hate or anger, knowing that your goal of weight loss is being sabotaged? Part of you is angered, and part of you is really thankful for the nostalgia, for that delicious childhood meal. And it's so conflicting, but it's really a common situation for people struggling with binge eating. If you have a medical condition, such as high cholesterol, for example, binge eating episodes can worsen or exacerbate levels of high cholesterol. And another example is it can worsen symptoms of IBS, which is irritable bowel syndrome. Whatever your medical condition is, binge episodes can sometimes worsen them. So this is something else to add to why don't we talk about them enough? Why don't we talk about binge eating enough? Number 3 is binge eating is always associated with secrecy and guilt. It can be very difficult to find out if someone's struggling with binge eating, as one of the hallmarks of binge eating is binging in secret. If you struggle with binging, do you ever have moments where you want to quickly hide food in your bedroom, or just rush down to the kitchen and bring food to your room? This is a common occurrence because binging can seem by society as shameful or degrading, making other people think you lack willpower, when that's far from the case with binge eating. You don't lack willpower, and you can't break through binge eating with willpower alone. People struggling with binge eating also don't visibly show signs that they're struggling with binge eating. You may be that average Joe who walks into a coffee shop, your friend who laughs at your jokes. It could be a loved one who says he or she is going to go on a diet and going to eat clean. It's hard to find out if someone struggles with binging because there is no look to binging also. You can be at a higher body weight and struggle with binge eating, but at the same time you can be a lower body weight and people might be applauding you for your looks when in reality you could be struggling with binge eating and so much shame and guilt. So let me tell you my story with binge eating and my lowest point with binging. It all started when I completed my first year of university whilst I was studying to be a dietitian. I knew that I was going to be passing the year, so the day before, I just had a black coffee and diet drinks so I can, quote-unquote, save calories for that big night. I received my results in the afternoon, and that was when I was so happy that I ordered 1 large pizza, a tub of ice cream, 2 large sets of fries from my favorite kebab shop, and a large pack of onion rings. I ate everything so quickly whilst watching YouTube videos and probably got to finish around maybe 80% of that massive meal until that's when I started to feel so hot and so full that I wasn't able to even sleep lying down. I had to sleep sitting up whilst leaning my back on the bed frame the whole night. And the reason why it was my lowest low with binge eating is that the next morning I went back home, which is back then in Essex, where we live in the UK, and we had only 4 weeks of summertime. And the first 2 weeks were basically just me in bed because I was so poorly with the fever, whilst my brothers were just enjoying their time out on the beach. I knew that this binge eating episode contributed to this fever. And what was worse is that I didn't even take time to enjoy the food with anyone else or to savor it. So what was meant to be a reward became a moment of sadness and embarrassment. So in this podcast series, I'll be sharing evidence-based tips to recover from binge eating, sharing practical advice as well as conversations with other people who have struggled with binge eating, as well as experts. So I really look forward to being with you in the further episodes of Binge Dietitian podcast. And thanks for listening to me and to my story. See you next time, guys. If you found this podcast helpful, you would definitely benefit from my binge eating freedom course in my website, bingedietitian.com. Learn more about the triggers to why you're binge eating and how to stop binge eating for good. No more food guilt, no more jumping from diet to diet, and no more shame. Go to the link in this episode for my binge eating freedom course to be one step closer to being binge free, starting today.